Thanks to my parents, I had 8 years of formal piano lessons, and I thought about actually including some of that in this introduction, but I am currently overhauling this office, and my keyboard is covered in a lot of paraphernalia, to put it nicely. Anyway, there's another instrument out there very similar that I love the sound of, and I sometimes wish I had learned to play. And today's guest is going to give me my first lesson. I'm Brian Johnson, and this is Nobody You Know. Hello and welcome to Nobody You Know. I'm Brian Johnson, and if you remember from Season 1, George Hanel was in an episode called Going Coastal about his life in the Coast Guard. Today we get to talk to his wife, Sue Hanel. Welcome to Nobody You Know, and thank you for joining me. And today I get to talk to a kindred spirit. She is in the world of keyboard music. I learned to play the piano. You learned to play the organ. So piano. Well, yeah, you can take a lot of the same principles back and forth between the two. But what little I've played on an organ, there are definitely some differences, and we'll get to those in a minute. But in preparing for this, you had an interesting history on how you took up the organ. Do you want to talk about that?
The organ itself, or music in general?
Well, we'll start with music in general. What got you into music?
I was born with it.
Okay.
It was in my soul from the time I was born, I think. When I was very little, my mother was never with us.
Okay.
And my dad had a tin ear. So nobody cared anything about music in my family. But I did have a grandmother that took care of us for a couple of years when I was young. And she played the piano, a little. But just the sound of a bell or a piano or an organ. We used to go down to Redondo Beach, California, and there was a merry-go-round at the end of one of the piers. And you could hear it all over from the beach on. And my heart would just leap. It was like I just loved that. And I knew I wanted to be able to play one of those one day.
Was it a proper organ or a merry-go-round calliope?
Oh, no, it was a big Wurlitzer organ.
Oh, okay.
Right in the middle of the skating rink.
Oh, very nice. Okay. You say you knew you wanted to pursue it. How did you start pursuing it? What was your role?
Well,
For me, it was my mom made me take lessons when I was 10.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, you poor guy. I would have given anything to have lessons. We had a piano in our house for a very short time. I think that was while my grandmother was there. And then when she left, the piano was gone. My dad bought me one of these little toy pianos. Oh, I loved it. I was just thrilled. And I guess I must have been in kindergarten. He had housekeepers that came, and they had a couple of kids to take care of us. And I came home one day, and one of her kids had taken it out, taken a hammer to it, and destroyed all the keys.
Oh, my.
So, it's kind of like, I'm going to do this even if the world is against me. I was the opposite of you.
You wanted it, but had a hard time getting access.
Yes.
My family had a piano, and that's why my mom made me start taking lessons, because I would poke around on it, and I would actually start to hear, I can play Mary Had a Little Lamb, and I was fingering it out by ear.
You had a good ear.
And so she said, you're taking lessons.
Good for her.
Okay, so you lost the piano, you lost the toy piano. Where do we go next?
Well, somewhere in there, another piano appeared.
Okay.
Now, you have to remember I was really young, so I don't know why they were coming and going. I think the one was my grandmother's. Then my dad had a girlfriend, and she wanted to learn piano, and the piano appeared in our house. Now, I was forbidden to touch that piano.
Oh, man.
So once in a while, I'd go in, sneak a little. Finally, they gave me lessons. I don't know, I must have been 7 or 8 for about a year. So I did have some lessons. And then she wasn't my stepmother, but the woman that held the piano, came over one day, and I had learned by ear how to play some pretty impressive things. Really made her mad. Out with the piano again.
Oh my goodness.
So no piano until I got to high school.
I just don't even get that. Just telling a young person you can't be musical.
Well, she was taking lessons. She was so bad. I'm sorry.
So the jealousy? Do you think that maybe that was
probably.
it? Because you were just figuring it out, and she was.
I could feel it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the difference. So high school, I took a music class. They had a grand at the front of the class. And I guess the teacher picked up on how passionate I was. So he gave me some extra lessons. And I almost always got to lead the class on the grand.
Very nice.
Just for the record. Then I went to college. I majored in psychology. And the reason I majored in psychology is that my mother was in a mental institution.
Okay.
And I was curious. I thought, well, maybe I can learn what happened and how you can help people. I decided that was not going to be for me. So I changed my major to teaching and music, and back came the piano again. Then I married, I was 20, and my first husband bought me a little spin-up piano, and I went at that with a passion. All this time it was the piano. But then one day, I had my baby in a stroller, and I went down to the local market. And up on a shelf was an organ and a sign that said, "Win this organ." Oh, I'm going to win that organ. Well, I bought a lot of groceries. I didn't win.
You didn't win. Oh, man.
About 10 years later, my first husband was transferred to San Bernardino, California. And he knew the owner of a music store. And the music store wanted an organ teacher. So here was the deal. If I would be their teacher, they would furnish me with an organ. So I was probably about 30 years old at this point. And here I go again with a passion. I threw myself into learning the organ. Now, they didn't bring the organ out right away.
Uh-oh.
And I get this phone call from this little lady, and she says, "I just bought an organ at Braver House. I understand you're going to be my teacher." Yeah. Yes. Could you tell me where middle C is on the organ? And I thought, it's probably the same as it is on the piano.
So at this point, you still didn't have organ lessons? Or
Nothing.
Oh, okay.
No. Never did get that organ, the one at the market, no. So I called the store and I said, "You want me to teach your organ, I'm going to have an organ." So they brought out an organ and a dozen books. So I started teaching for them, and I taught for them for, 10 years, over 10 years. I did shows for them. They used to have a big festival. It was called the Orange Festival. And again, the owner of the store came to me and said, "We need somebody to play the organ in the middle of where the displays were."
Oh, nice.
I could tell you about one of my jobs.
Go for it.
It was a restaurant, but there was a bar area. And I get there, and it turns out I'm in the bar. And it was a little grand piano. And this fellow had probably way too much to drink. And he kept leaning over and saying, "Hey, can you play Melancholy Baby Honey?" And my mind is thinking, this is really not what I had in mind. They would give a package lesson at the store. And so you bought an organ, you got 10 free lessons. And that was me. I gave the 10 free lessons. So at one point I had 60 students.
Wow.
And, well, my husband one day, I developed shingles. My husband said, you are getting rid of some of the students. So he got on the phone and he dropped about 20 students for me. I ended up playing in church and here and there, you know, for different events, fashion shows, things like that. And it's not that hard. You always say, how can you do the keyboard and the pedals?
Well, yeah, I have asked that of you before because, I mean, I can do the hands.
Yeah.
And I grasp certain concepts, like with the organ, the moment you let go of a note, it's just done.
Yes.
You don't have a sustain pedal like you do on the piano. So when you want a sound to continue, you have to keep a finger on it.
You crawl.
Yeah.
You have to substitute and crawl. You're absolutely right.
So then combining just all of that with the feet, that's something I have never I've never experienced. I think I tried it once on an organ somewhere and thought this just must be a pain to learn, but you say it's not that hard.
No.
Okay.
And pretty soon that's the most automatic part of your playing.
So is that typical for good organists? They get to a point where they don't even need to look at their feet? They just know where...
don't look at your feet.
Okay.
You never look at your feet.
Okay, sorry. Now, I seem to have noticed over the years the organ kind of disappearing. Is just kind of on its way out? I mean, now that we have keyboards where you can press a button that says organ and you can sound like an organ.
That's right.
You just kind of cheat that way.
But you don't have to play the pedals.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were some pastors that wrote books about you've got to do the young music if you're going to get your young people. So the music started changing. Mm-hmm. And it went to the guitars and drums and so forth. Still the piano. Piano's still there.
Yeah.
But the organs slowly just were taken out of the churches.
Well, they're kind of taken out of everywhere. I just don't...
And they're a wonderful instrument. It's like you have the whole world. I mean, you've got an orchestra.
Yeah.
And when you learn how to use that, it's just really satisfying.
I've had many people tell me I was basically born old-fashioned because when I was in junior high and even elementary school, I loved the sound. I loved classical music. And I love just a good big organ. Obviously the famous ones like Toccata and Fugue played on an organ. Just that big sound. I've never been to some of these European cathedrals where they still have the pipes, the actual pipes blowing air. But I'd love to go to one of those. So it is kind of sad to me that people just go, that old instrument, get that out. It's such a grand sound. Well, before we go today, do you think we could get a sample?
Oh, I didn't know you were going to do that.
Well, I'm just asking. You can say no.
I'll try. Okay, play a G chord.
Okay, G chord.
And a G... No, play the melody. Let's try it again.
Okay.
Play the melody, and down here you're going to play...
Down here is the G chord.
This is your left hand. All right, now...
Uh-oh.
You are going to sit so that your left foot is not there.
What? Right, but I'm just getting in position.
It's over the G. Can you find the G?
That G?
Yep.
Okay.
You'll have to tilt a little. Your foot's wider than mine.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I got to use my big toe.
Now you're going to always, that's home.
Okay.
So you're always going to know when you get there that you're on a G.
Now how, should I be...
You want to be positioned so that that's where you'll fall.
So that's just natural.
That's a natural position.
Oh,
this is your expression pedal.
Yeah, I just turned it down.
That's when you want to get it louder and softer instead of doing it with your arm.
There we go. Okay. Right. All right.
Now, you're going to play that melody.
Okay.
And a G chord. You're doing it.
Well, that's easy.
Okay, play that. Now you're going to swing your leg far down to the last one and play a C chord with the next note. Now you're going to go to now the F. Good job.
Yeah, but I looked.
Well, you're going to have to look when you're learning. Look at you go.
Because thankfully I can do the hand part by sight.
Well, you're doing
so I can look
pedal.
down at the foot.
I'm going to give you a little more. Now, the next time you do that, I don't want you to look.
We just get to the point where I'm supposed to go to an E7.
Oh, no.
The first time I'm supposed to go to an E this whole time. You
Well,
want me to
your
not
foot-
look. C,
your-
D, E.
Now, look, bring your foot in a little more.
What do you
and
mean by
as you
in?
bring it up, do you feel that black key right there?
Yeah.
All right.
And then a G without looking.
Yes.
And a C without looking. Well, I will say, on something as simple as this, especially with the chord markings up there,
Yes.
doing the foot was a little easier than I thought it would be. But without those, for me to read the left and right hand
And
the foot, maybe that was what intimidated me the first time. Was
It
because
would.
it's 3 lines of music, and I have a hard enough time with 2. All right, well, we have to do, before I go,
What? You want to see?
no, it's in D minor though.
Oh, it's D minor. That's it.
But D didn't sound right just now. Oh, because I was hitting E.
There it is. The Phantom. Now take this leg and push your. Now to push in.
Pushing, you want louder?
Sure. If you're going to do that. Fill up the room. Oh, you can do more than that. There it is.
We've been talking today with Sue Honnell and her lifelong love of the organ, including a brief lesson with a rather hopeless, helpless future organ player, perhaps. Who knows? But if you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you hit the like button underneath the episode. And if you enjoy the channel, click the subscribe button and the little bell that lets you know every time I've uploaded a new episode, which, when everything goes right, is 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time every Tuesday. If you'd like to be on the program, go ahead and send me an email at 10thandfur@outlook.com. If you're in the Central Oregon area particularly, I could probably go a little bit further out toward the edges of Oregon, but right now we're pretty low budget, so if you're in Alabama, you're just going to have to sit and watch for now. But so many people have said to me, I just don't have anything to talk about. I'm not interesting. And that's not true. Everyone is interesting, and you don't have to be famous to be fascinating. This is Nobody You Know, only now you do.